Okay, we're looking today at the female reproductive system. We're going to start with perhaps the most important primary sexual organ of the female reproductive system, which is the ovaries. These are the female gonads, so this orange structure here that we're looking at is the ovary. The ovary is the site of production for our gametes and our female sex hormones. Okay, so coming up from the ovaries, we have a structure, a tube. If we turn, we can see this tube here that runs all the way into the uterus, which is the structure here. These are called our fallopian tubes. Now on the fallopian tube, we have the fimbriae, which at the end you can't see them, but this would be down here, the finger-like projections of the fallopian tubes that are lined with cilia that during ovulation draw the oocyte into the fallopian tube because our ovaries release the oocyte into the peritoneal cavity. So they don't actually go straight into the fallopian tube. The fimbriae are going to sweep them into the fallopian tube. Two parts of the fallopian tube are the infundibulum, which is this part here, and the rounded portion right here is called our ampulla. Again, we have our uterus. Oh, about the ampulla, this is primarily our site of fertilization. So when we talk about fertilization occurring, we're talking about that happening in the ampulla. So now we're going to look at some of the ligaments that hold the uterus, ovaries, and uterine tubes that help anchor them into position, basically. So if we look in here, so I'm going to take this part off and we're going to bend the model down a little bit so we can see this. So this structure right here, we're going to call this our round ligament. Then this little teeny structure, which I'm not sure that you can see it, but there's a little teeny structure here. I'm running my pin along, that is our ovarian ligament. And then all the way back here, this whole sheet, which is a fold of peritoneum, is our broad ligament. So those ligaments help to hold, again, the uterus, ovaries, and uterine tubes in place and helps to anchor them. So going back to the outside of the model, okay, so we looked at the ovaries, we looked at the fimbriae, the infundibulum, the ampulla, the fallopian tube. We know that this is the uterus. So we're going to look at a couple other structures on the outside. So we have the rectum, the uterus, or excuse me, the vagina. So the rectum, vagina, and the bladder. Then we have this bulge of adipose tissue out here called the mons pubis. And if we tilt the model, you can see that bulge a little bit better. So that's the mons pubis. This fold of skin here is called our labia majora. Together with the mons pubis, we're going to call that our vulva. Okay, so we're going to tilt this back up. Oh, and there's one other structure down here. This fold of skin right here is called the labia minora. And together, the labia minora and the whole area that's enclosed inside of here by the labia minora is called the vestibula. So we're going to take this off and finish with the outside. Okay, to the inside now. So we're looking more specifically right now at the uterus, and we're looking at the regions of the uterus. So this rounded portion here, we're calling our fundus. This portion, which is the central portion we have, is called our body. And if you look very closely, this rigid area right here is called our cervix. Now, we have three different layers inside the uterus. The outermost layer, which lines the uterus, is called the parametrium. So the parametrium is this outside structure here. This very thick muscular structure of tissue, and it is smooth muscle, is called our myometrium. Then we have this very thin layer inside, which is closest to the lumen of the uterus, which is called the endometrium. Now, the endometrium has two different layers. We have the stratum functionalis, which is the layer that if I were to, that basically that my pin would be touching if this were an actual uterus. So this layer here is called the stratum functionalis, and it's the part that actually responds to the female sex hormones, progesterone and estrogen, and it's going to grow in size and thicken and be shed during each uterine cycle. The stratum basal, which we can't see, but it would be most deep, would be the part of the endometrium, the sublayer of the endometrium that replaces the stratum functionalis at the end, following each menstrual cycle. So, again, we have three layers. We're talking about layers, not regions. The layers: the parametrium, the myometrium, the endometrium. The sublayers of the endometrium, which are the stratum basal, which is the most deep, and the stratum functionalis. Okay, so on to the cervix. Running through the cervix, we have a canal, which we're calling cervical canal. We have two openings that we have a name for. This opening between the uterus and the cervix is the internal os. This opening between the end of the cervix and the beginning of the vagina we're calling the external os. Then we have this rounded structure here that we're going to call the fornix. Okay? So now we're talking about the vagina, which is basically a simple or stratified squamous lining that has temporary folds, or permanent folds, sorry, that are called rugae. So just like in the bladder, we have rugae in the vagina. And those serve to be a stimulant during sex for the penis. Then we have the labia minora, labia majora. The opening at the end of the vagina is the external vaginal orifice. The opening at the end of the urethra is called the external urethral orifice. And this whole space in here that's closed in by the labia minora is called the vestibula. Then again, the mons pubis, which is the adipose tissue here that causes a slight bulge, and the labia majora, and together those make up the uvula. And that about does it for the female reproductive system. Just know that this is the rectum, this is the uterus, the vagina, and the bladder, and you should be good to go.